No, can you briefly introduce yourself and just share with me what some of the challenges were that that you had with anxiety?
Sure. So yeah, my name's Noel. I live in Colorado. I have a beautiful wife, two wonderful little kids. I've worked in the travel industry for nearly 20 years now, and what I do professionally, working in the travel industry, involves a lot of presenting to large audiences, so kind of public speaking. And unfortunately, I was on a specific call where I was presenting to a large audience, and I hadn't really prepared probably well enough ahead of time. And that was the first time I really had an overwhelming panic attack um, that went on for nearly 90 minutes while I was on this call. And what's interesting is I didn't drop off the call. I continued doing what I did. Um, and I delivered the call pretty darn well. I had a lot of feedback. People said, "You're so good at this," and I said, "You have no
Yeah.
idea what was actually happening behind the scenes." Um, so that was kind of the unfortunate start of what had happened. Again, a little over a year ago. Um, I tried several different things to, work through this. I went into therapy. I did take antidepressants for a number of months. I found that it wasn't really for me. And then eventually, probably 6 months ago or so, I came across your video, Jort, on, I think it was on my Facebook feed as kind of a targeted ad. I'm getting a
Mhm.
lot of the anxiety-based ads. Um, and to be honest with you, when I first saw it, I almost just scrolled past, right? Because it's just another, was this just another gimmick? Was it just another, something that was going to give me a bunch of false hope and false promises, right? But I watched you because in your ad, you were speaking and you were describing your experience, Jort. And for those couple minutes, even just after a couple minutes, I said, "This is exactly what I'm going through." He gets it. He understands what this problem is. Um, and so that's kind of what I said. I'm going to give it a shot. Your program is very reasonably priced. Um, and that's what really led me to Anxiety Wave and the
Mhm.
wonderful your Canvas. Can I just say something? I know this
Of
is, I
course.
know you're recording, but, and I mean this in the most platonic way possible, but I love you, man. For what you have created.
Thank you, man.
It's true. It's just true.
Well, I love you too
Wow.
for putting in the work, obviously joining the program, and also taking the time today to, guide me through your processes and telling me all about it. And it's been a pleasure to have you, and so very much appreciate it. What were some of do you remember some of the key like breakthroughs or insights that you had during your journey with my program?
Sure. So let me think about that. I would say probably the 5 steps is a huge one because that's really, and that I think is in week 5 or week 6, maybe
Yeah.
somewhere in there. Um, and I think that for probably a lot of people is big because that's where you can actually start to put the theory into practice, right? And so like when you are going out to do whatever you do and you feel your anxious feelings, you can start to put into practice these 5 steps of like, here's how when I start to feel the anxiety trigger, here's what I can do to start to work through it. And again, it's not something that happens quickly or easily or overnight. We were talking about this earlier too. This is a marathon, not a sprint. It's going to take time. I've completed the program, to be very honest, and I'm still not 100% there. But I look back at where I was before starting Anxiety Wave to today, and even now, like being on this call with you, how I feel is completely different. And before the program, I would often get on the phone and I wasn't really okay. I would get through whatever I needed to do, but the whole time I would just be feeling intense anxiety and panic. And now I get on the phone and I may not be 100% comfortable, but it's a whole different sort of feeling. It's a feeling so much closer to the person I was before all of this started. It's so profound and so dramatic to have that shift. And literally without using any magic medication or any sort of, special breathing or any of the kind of coping mechanisms that so many people with anxiety feel is literally just from watching your videos and going, I have to just let this happen to me. Bring it on, anxiety.
That's it.
One thing with this program is it's not going to work for you if you're not willing to put in the work. And it's really hard for a lot of people. Part of it is because you're having to literally face what's probably your biggest fear in life. A lot of us would rather just say, no, I don't want to do
Yeah.
that. So I would say, and I don't want to sound like this, Jort, but I wouldn't sign up for this if you're not really ready to do that. I think in one of your videos, Jort, you say when you're going through some of these practices, sometimes it's good to just smile, right? Like this is
Yeah.
it's not a fun thing to deal with, but the more you can try to I don't know, make light of it in a way, the better you are. So I created my anxiety monster. I named him Merv. Don't ask me where I got that name. It just was what popped in my head. And yeah, I guess I didn't use it a whole lot, but there were times just doing simple things, like a lot of the simple things in life that I took for granted before all this started. Whether it was just going out to go buy a gallon of milk at the grocery store or whatever. If I was feeling anxious, I would just kind of talk to, almost have an internal monologue with Merv and just say, hey, I can feel you here with me. I'm gonna go buy some milk right now. You're more than welcome to come along. And that's part of it. That's the whole kind of, again, big part of like embracing or running towards the anxiety, right? Is it's like, I don't want to push this away. I don't want to suppress this when I have to go buy some groceries. You can be with me here the whole time. So
Yeah.
that was my anxiety monster. And then the other big one I kind of think of is I do a lot of my work remotely, but I do still occasionally travel. And a few months ago, I had to actually travel and go to a kind of a large corporate event and deliver in-person training to decent sized audiences. And I remember leading into that, and I think we spoke before that too, Jort, and I was just so anxious, like just the idea of air travel, having to go to a new place. I didn't really know a lot of these people. It's a new company. And I remember this was right around the time in the program where you talk about exposure, right? And you actually do exposure exercises. And it just happened to line up very well. And I said, you know what? This is one of my exposure exercises. And it was a perfect one. And it wasn't perfect. I still felt anxiety. It wasn't a perfect day, but I got up and I presented a couple times and I met with a ton of new people. And I went to a cocktail mixer at the end of the evening, and it was like a full 12 hours of me having to like literally be someone who people turn to for information, having to be engaging and thought provoking, and I did it, and I did it really well.
Yeah, can you share like do you have any specific examples or a story where you notice like a big difference in how you handled anxiety versus how you used to handle anxiety? If anything comes to mind?
So I mentioned just a few minutes ago the call that I did recently. I had to do several of them. It was a very similar environment when I had my panic attack, my first panic attack. It was a large call, Zoom call. I couldn't see anyone, nobody's cameras on, but I see a list of participants. They can ask questions as I'm working through it, an hour-long call. And I remember I got on and I started presenting, and I kind of felt it, right? It just kind of all of a sudden appears. And I'm like, oh gosh, is this gonna all happen again? People were asking all these questions, and I'm just like sitting there like, oh no. And then it just didn't. And it was just like, and I think part of it was because I had in that moment the thought, like, bring it on, give me more, have a panic attack on this call in front of all these people. And so that like thought and that feeling of almost just like giving it all up, that's that like freeing moment where you're like, it doesn't matter. And when I'm having that feeling, ask for it, give me more, because that's what will really take you to this place of like, oh, I'm okay. And then I continued on the call for another 45 minutes or whatever, and felt more calm than I probably ever have. Just sitting there like, it was like not, like nothing, like autopilot. I got it. So
Beautiful. That's the real you,
yeah,
isn't it? That's at that
that's
moment. It's
it.
real because
Yeah.
because you shown yourself, and I always say it in the way, in the language of the nervous system, which is the language of action and actually doing stuff instead of rationally thinking or whatever. Because you know you're safe in those moments, like logically, but also you don't feel that
Mm,
way. So when you say like, "Bring it on," I can handle this. I don't have to do anything, but I can go through panic. It's very powerful, by the way. It's very powerful when people do that, when they go and face anxiety, when they actually are like bringing it, like the paradox intent, as you said, bring it on, anxiety. Let me have a big panic attack, because that way you really break it down as quickly as I can, as you can. Sorry. So, no,
mhm.
what would you say to someone considering joining the program but might be hesitating at this point?
So yeah, I mean, I looked at it personally this way. It's very affordable, I think, for what you get out of it. You get a full 4 months of content. It's pretty remarkable too, because the way it's set up is it's on a weekly basis. So you have to complete the weekly lessons, and then you actually have to wait a week. It's kind of like all of us want to just binge watch every TV show. And in this case, you can't do that, but I think it's actually a good way to do it because again, you have to kind of absorb and digest the information you take, and you have to go out there and live your life and try to put it into practice every single week. So I think the format that way is pretty incredible. Um, Again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I think it sounds like a long time doing this for 4 months, but it actually goes by pretty quickly. I remember in the beginning feeling very excited to see the new videos each week. And then as time passed and I actually got started to feel better, I remember I wouldn't necessarily watch them right as they came out. I would be like, you know what, I'm feeling pretty good. And so I would kind of delay it sometimes. Um, I think it was for a lot of people, it would just be, is this just another gimmick, right? Is it just another way to try to take my money and it's not really going to help me? You have to, I guess, consider where you are, and it is definitely very much geared towards folks with anxiety or panic disorders, definitely panic attacks. The first really month of the program really goes into the theory about panic attacks. It breaks down exactly what they are, how they function. Just gaining that knowledge is like was like huge for me. It was truly a game changer. Um, I don't know. I would say just do it. I mean, the thing is, like the way you had your original video set up, the way you broke it down, the way you described what you went through. I think anybody who watches that, like I did, you go, that's exactly my problem. And if you
Mhm.
see that and you say, here's someone who is claiming to have a solution, I can tell you as an actual participant in the program that it's not just a claim. This is legit. It will help you get better.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And if you think back now, what would you say, where would you have been if you didn't, if you hadn't learned this the stuff that you learned, if you hadn't joined the program? Can you imagine where you've been, where you would be today?
Yeah, I don't want to imagine that. I don't know. It would probably have gotten worse, continued to spiral, made my everyday life harder and harder. Um, I really needed something to help me get out of this anxiety and panic loop and cycle that unfortunately, again, those of us who uh who have this condition, just it's an unfortunate thing. Uh, but I don't know how I would have, honestly, because it's like taking the tools that you show, again, theory behind panic, how it works, how it functions. And then from there, I looked at it as like phase two of the program was how to actually start to put into practice ways to stop this from happening. And again, not even stop it. It's not the right way to put it. It's allowing it to happen to you. Um, because that's what again you have to do. And there's a whole theory behind it, and I won't get into all of it right now, York, but you know the 5 steps of like how do we when we feel this anxiety or this panic or this fear come on in those moments where we're triggered by it, whether you're walking in the grocery store, whether you're driving your car, whether you're like me and you're about to present on Zoom, you all of a sudden have this method to say to start to calm yourself and to make yourself realize that it may be a manufactured fantasy in your own mind, but none of it is really real. But as soon as you can start to do it, even just a little bit, and it may be just baby steps, right? Very incrementally, you all of a sudden start to see that little pinhole of light at the end of the tunnel, and you go like, oh, it's not gonna happen in a week or two. It probably will take who knows how long. It doesn't even matter how long. But if you keep at it and keep putting those things into practice, it will, I can say this unequivocally, or it will change your life. Because there's all these other, I mean, obviously, like I say, if you are dealing with anxiety and you have a social media account, there's a good chance you're getting hit with endless targeted ads for all these different programs and tools. Anxiety Wave is obviously on there. I remember seeing them for vagus nerve stimulators, breathing exercises, meditation, different gummies and other little herbal supplements. The list is quite literally endless, right? So to be fair, how do you wade through that? How do you determine what is helpful for you, what is right for you? And most of it for me, I bypassed. I did try a few different things, but within a few days, I could kind of tell it's not gonna have an impact for the level of anxiety and panic that I'm feeling. It's just not gonna do anything. That is until I came across Anxiety Wave. And I remember watching like the introduction and just, again, having you break down what is happening, because I think for me and everybody else who is in the program, I see it on the message boards, right? It's like, this is exactly it. It's like this little niche market, again, for us, the lucky ones, right? Who deal with this, and you've formulated a way to escape. So again, thank you. I can't thank you
You're
enough.
Noel, you're a public speaker. I can tell. These one-liners are just so good. You could
Isn't
like
it
be.
weird? This is the paradox though, man. Like, why I can do it so well. I've spoken at weddings, like, and I just kill it. And people are like, oh my God. And then this happened. And all of a sudden I'm afraid to do what I'm so good at. And that's where I'm still struggling, if I'm being
Mhm.
honest with you. And feel free to cut this out, but just that's where, and it's weird, like even getting on the phone with you today, I'm like
Mhm.
nervous, right? I'm anxious. And what's happened now I've noticed is I'll get on and I might have a couple minutes where I'm like, but then just like on the other Zoom call where I'm presenting, it just kind of was like, you're okay. It's like, it
Yeah.
doesn't manifest and spike anymore the way it used to. And now I'm sitting here talking to you and I'm like, fine, I feel pretty darn
I mean,
good.
it's also,
But
and I still get that as well. I initially didn't feel any anxiety. Obviously, I was then. So I eventually said I'm recovered and I was doing really good. And also then I started all of this and I was focusing more on it, which is sometimes the thing you don't want to. It's in the program as well. Like you gotta let go of the focus. And if you keep
yeah,
waking up and thinking, "Am I recovered? Am I recovered? Am I recovered?" You're not gonna be recovered, right? So I was like, back then I was like, okay, now I'm gonna do this. So I'm focusing on it a little bit more. And then I started to recognize that sometimes before an event I get nervous, which
mm,
I always have, even in the
yeah,
moments after I said I was recovered before I started this program. But I just didn't make a big deal out of it. And now it's like, my brain's like, are you really recovered? It was trying to like find reasons to say
uh,
you're not. And I was zooming into these moments of nervousness my brain's like, oh, wait, you're still anxious. That eventually I came to this realization. I'm like, part of that is my personality, part of it is also maybe like a mechanism that really helps me. Like if I sometimes if I get on if I have to do a call in your example like this, I get a little bit nervous, which keeps me sharp. So it's like a mechanism as well to use. It is also so I'm definitely not saying that there's no issue or like it's up to you to decide what you want and make that goal, but also remind yourself that to set the rules as well to when you've reached the goal. So for yourself, when this is actually something I want you to do, whenever you have a chance, like write down when you are recovered. Otherwise, you'll never know when you can actually give yourself that label. If there's no panic attacks anymore, or if you aren't afraid of panic attacks anymore, then you might be recovered already, right? So sometimes we are already there, and then eventually just letting go of the need to prove yourself that you're recovered tends to take away the extra stress that might be there now as you're really still focused on it a lot. That makes sense.
Yeah. No, it, it may, God, thank you for sharing with me too. It's cool to hear from, it's like from the horse's mouth, right? Um,
You're calling me a
because
horse? Sorry.
that's probably an American expression.
I know, I got it, I got
Okay, okay.
it.
No, it's funny you say that because like it just hits home so hard because I do think back and I go, when have I last had a full, like really intense panic attack? In a long time. And not only have I continued living my life, but we've been more and more actively like social and I've been busier with work and just doing all these things. I'm just constantly out and about. And so what you just said, it's like, that's it.
I mentioned this, I think the other day, like last year I had some stress, like financial stuff. There's lots of things changing in my life, and I started to feel sensations again, which was a long time. But you
Right.
are equipped with this method, and obviously it's about repetition. But you've done that already. It's not about living your life doing exposure exercise, going from one exposure to the other exposure. No, it's about doing it a couple of times, then eventually trusting in knowing that you have that response and allowing the mechanism that is anxiety, so to speak, fear or just the stresses in terms of like the sensations aren't actually anxiety. They're just, the physical sensations are just adrenaline, are just cortisol, are just you're on stress, you're on your body's doing what it's supposed to do, and you know how to respond. So it's very important to for yourself to recognize when am I recovered, to find out when are you recovered, write that down and see, and remind yourself of that as well.
And it's cool to hear you say it all because it like makes me realize how far I've come, right? Because I still have moments where I'm like, oh my God, am I not better at all? Like, am I really just, it feels like I'm kind of running in place. And then I think back and I like hearing what you just said, that's exactly it. Like I think about going out to my kid's friend's birthday party. It's like a 5-year-old's birthday party and having a panic attack like for the first half an hour and just sitting there and be like, and sitting there talking to people. And now I go out to these events and I might feel, and I trick myself because I'm telling myself still, oh, is this going to happen? Is it going to happen? But then I go out and I'm fine. And I go out and I'm social and maybe I feel a little anxiousness here and there, whatever, but it's not a 30-minute panic attack, So it's like, it's just this almost like it's like a final hurdle, what you kind of just described, Jort. And
Yeah.
that's where I think I am struggling a bit to be like, how do I really finally get over this? And it's not, again, not a matter of like not feeling anxiety or panic or fear ever again, because it's going to happen, of course. And that's one thing too that really helped me get through panic is going, I probably am going to have a panic attack again. And you know what? It's fine. Like I literally now I just think about it and I go, hey, like what? I'll feel uncomfortable for a couple minutes. I know what it's all about.
And that makes sense. It's the protection mechanism, and that's why it's really important to let go of that focus on anxiety. Which, by the way, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean because initially anxiety is something you want to avoid. You don't want to do. You want to resist. Then you stop doing that, and you accept that you focus on it for 16 weeks and even more. Uh, and then it feels like you need to hold on to that focus to either grow even more or to
Yeah.
remain in this way. But in the end, it's obviously you've done this and this is not going to go away. But removing that focus on it will make you relax more automatically as you're focused more on what you want to do and not on what you want to either prove yourself that you can. You've done that. You've proven yourself that you can handle a panic attack big time, multiple
Yes.
times, right? You can't continue doing this. Like we can have another call next year and you can tell me about all the exposure exercises you did, which is great. But I'd love next year to speak to you again and you tell me about all the awesome stuff that you did that you wanted to do, right? It's maybe the same thing, but it's different
It's
because it's
exactly the same. Yeah.
yeah, but it's
Oh,
not
sorry, go
we don't
ahead.
have to call it an exposure exercise. It's just life, right? You've exposed
Yeah.
yourself to anxiety. You've done that, the anxiety part, but then the second part next to that is literally about life. What is it you want to do? Decide to
Right.
do that and say no to the things you don't want to do as much as you can. And whether that's in your case, like we've spoken before, it is obviously whether that's for you finding a different job, doing that side hustle next to your job, going on those hikes, doing those things eventually take away the focus on anxiety. And it might, as you said, it might mean, sorry, it doesn't mean that anxiety never comes back in your life, the emotion of fear, whether it probably won't be a panic attack, but if it is, that's fine. You know how to handle it. But if you now start to focus on it too much, you're trying to either convince yourself that you're recovered or you're worried that you aren't. And if
Yeah.
then you're just adding adrenaline and stress on the
Yeah.
fact that you basically are not completely stress adrenaline free, right? So you're adding this stuff that you don't want to feel,
Yes. And the
which is
cycle
obviously that cycle
continues.
again, right? Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so sometimes that happens. Sometimes it happens that we don't have panic, we don't have much anxiety, but then we get so far and we just don't want to give into it. We just don't want to lose control of that focus on anxiety, that momentum that we have, or we just hard on ourselves, which I've done as well. And like, I cannot feel nervous for an exam. I cannot feel nervous for a call. I cannot feel nervous for like sometimes I go into the city like with my friends on a night out or whatever, and I get a little bit anticipatory, whether it's, by the way, anticipatory excitement or anxiety. That's just totally up to how I interpret this. Because my friends have anticipatory excitement, but I label it as
Right.
anxiety, which is the exact same feeling. So I can usually tell
Right.
myself, "Hey, I'm excited about this feeling," and this has actually been like science has shown this that it's so that the similar energy, but the interpretation is what makes it different. Just like going like
Yeah.
on your wedding day versus going to a doctor, right? You both are nervous at the start of that day. The one of them you're excited, the other one you're like scared or whatever. So it's very like a thin line. So
Yeah, no, you hit it
I
on the head. And it's funny too, I will just say this. It's funny you say, you can go and watch the program again because it totally makes sense. And I actually went in there yesterday for the first time, like since I finished. And I was like, maybe I will try this. And I actually went in and I kind of picked, I think I did like the acceptance video from week 5,
Mhm.
whatever. And I watched it and it was helpful, but I'm like, it's kind of what you were just saying, Jort. It's like, I already know all this. I don't need to, and it's not like I don't, you make wonderful content, wonderful videos, but like, do I really need to go rewatch it? Like, I know it. I've got it. It's now just trying to like let this final little piece go, which is what you were just talking about, which is um I'm probably already there. I'm probably already
So
recovered. I'm doing
it's
exactly everything that I would want to do or would need to do for my job. And now it's just a matter of going, let's just try to let this go, like completely. The thoughts, the waking up in the morning and thinking, am I okay? Am I going to be okay today? It's like,
you got
yeah, dude, you are. You already are.
what advice would you give someone at the start of the journey? Is there any tip, any advice you can give if someone's at the exact start of this journey, maybe just signing up to this, maybe just starting to read into this?
Right. Um, I think my biggest thing, and I kind of mentioned it before, but if you're gonna go get into this and you're gonna really, try the anxiety weight program, you have to put in 100% effort, right? Um, it can't just be like going and sitting in a therapist's office once a week and then living your life the same way that you did. Um, you actually have to, watch. I remember taking studious notes as you were going through. It's a really good way to retain information. I would just pause and, take notes. Drew out all like the different graphs and charts that you had, um, and really, I think you really have to say, I want this. I want to rid myself of this problem. I want to improve my life. I want to become a better person. And when you complete the videos each week, you have to then take that knowledge that you've gained and you need to go out there and you need to try to use it. And again, depending on where you are in your life, depending on your level, I know for some people that's hard. If you're not, if you're kind of stuck at home or whatever, wherever you might be, it's a big step. I never got to that point. I never allowed myself to not be able to walk out my door, but I know the feeling. I sure as hell know that feeling. So it's really hard. I totally get it. But the only way that this is going to work for you and that you can truly try to get better is by putting it into practice. Even if you're scared as hell, just go out there and do your best. And if it doesn't, it's not always going to be perfect. There are going to be times where you might try to go out and do exposure exercises or whatever, and it's not going to go according to plan, and it's going to feel like a setback, and you're going to feel like you're back to square one. But It's not, because you're trying. You're at least putting in that effort. And if you do it and you stack little positive experiences on top of each other over time, it certainly can get better for you.
Wow, no, thank you very much. I think I got like
Yeah,
one more left. What's like the thing you're most excited about in your future now? Now that you've completed the program, is there anything that comes to mind?
sure. You know, I have some interesting professional opportunities out there, which are fun to think about. And I guess potentially making changes like that in my life. But honestly, to answer that probably more directly, or it's getting to go out and do whatever I want with my kids, because I have an 8-year-old and a 5.5-year-old, and they're both so awesome and they're both super active. And I've taken them skiing and ice skating, and we go hiking and biking all the time. And to just be out there living life with them and just feeling very close to myself again, and just being this amazing family unit. I have a wonderful wife as well. Um, and just feeling like I'm close to being back to the man, not the man that I was. I don't think that's going through this sort of experience. And if anybody out there who's listening, if you've been through it, you probably can understand, you're probably never going to be the same person again, right? You are going to be a totally different version. But I look at it as like being reborn, or like kind of upgrading to version 2.0, because you are faced with this immense challenge, and to be able to overcome it is something that it's a weird thing to say, because a lot of people think with anxiety it's kind of like, it's a weak sort of quality or whatever. But to be able to work through this, I feel like we are some of the strongest people out there to be able to overcome something like this. It's not easy. So yeah, to answer your question though, it would definitely be family time. I love being out there with my kids and my wife, for sure.
Thank you, Noel. Appreciate it so much. Thank you
Yeah.
again for taking the time today. It's beautiful.